Get ready, people. We're gonna go. Today on ADHD, we got one hell of a time for you. Coming up soon, there is one thing you can always remember. You are the master of your own universe. You are the master of your own mind. So come, let us rise together to become the great ultra community of ADHDers.
Ooh. Hey everyone, welcome back to ADHD Explorers. This is Addy and we got your co-host Ben. And today we are talking about somewhat of a controversial topic, some might say. I've got my espresso shot ready. We are diving into ADHD and caffeine. Let's go!
Yo, so caffeine is a crazy thing that affects our brain in a kind of different way. We all have different reactions to it, you know? Some of us just get calm. Some of us get pumped. Some of us can focus again. So it's different for everyone. So we, at ADHD Explorers, we're going to explore what is going on with caffeine. This is not medical advice. We're just humans with ADHD like you, and we're trying to figure it out. We've done a bunch of research on this episode. We have some fun facts for you, and we've asked all our community about their experiences with caffeine. So maybe by the end of this, we'll have some juicy knowledge for you to download into your brain. How's that sound?
Yeah. Juicy bean juice. Love it.
Juicy bean juice. So I wanted to do this episode because for me, I know Addy is hyped about caffeine. She even has an espresso and a shot in her hand right now. It's ridiculous. For me, I remember my first can of Monster that I ever had. I didn't really have caffeine until I was like 23, and then I had it, and it was like euphoric. Wow. I couldn't believe the effect. It was almost like a drug to me. I could focus, or I was like crazy hyped. Yeah, what is a drug? So, but now if I have it, I get super angry and I turn into a knob, turn into an absolute dickhead. And I just get moody and I get frustrated at anything. I get triggered by everything. So I am now not having any caffeine, which is, I don't know, my nervous system is way more regulated than it ever has been, which feels really good. And I didn't realize the effects, the science behind what it does to our body. You know, like it can leap us into fight or flight. It can release adrenaline. And so these effects, like if you have like anxiety, which I have basically, then it can make you go absolutely bonkers. But it's different for everyone. What about you, Addy? Do you like how is it for you? Oh, she's chugging.
As I say, as I finish my espresso shot. So I don't know. I was raised in New Zealand. In New Zealand, I would say we have like a skewed ratio of coffee drinkers per capita. I started working as a barista when I was like 14, 15. And, you know, if you're working as a barista, you have to know what good coffee tastes like. So I started drinking coffee in my teens. And I found I'm dependent on caffeine for sure. I was highly addicted for a certain point of my 20s where if I did not have a coffee by 2 p.m. I would have a headache because of caffeine withdrawals. So
Wow.
it was definitely like at that point where I was drinking a lot of coffee. While I was studying at uni, I would try not to drink too much coffee. So I would alternate between coffee and tea, which is like, tea is just slightly less caffeine.
But tea,
but yeah, I was
fact,
consuming...
contains L-theanine, which is almost like the counterbalancing thing because it stimulates that calming side of your nervous system. So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I
it's
wonder
the
if that's why
L-theanine
I
in
can
it.
have a cup of tea at night, and even if it's black tea that's caffeinated, I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, I can have this at bedtime and still be calmed down.
Wow.
But yeah.
So you feel
I
the
drank
difference.
way too much caffeine at university. Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
I was unmedicated, undiagnosed, and I think I was essentially self-medicating, right, with caffeine. Because caffeine is a stimulant, and I think for those of us I've not looked into it. You have better data on the actual facts of how they interact, but I think those of us who react well to stimulant medication potentially also are prone to like getting into caffeine more because similar effects. But it's crazy like how different it is across the spectrum for
Yeah.
everyone. Now that I'm medicated, my doctor actually told me when I was going on meds, he's like, don't cut the caffeine out altogether, even though it is like one of the recommendations on stimulant meds is like, do not take with caffeine. But he was like,
Yeah.
because you drink a lot of coffee, like you are going to have withdrawal symptoms if you completely cut it out. So now I'm down to like 1 to 2 cups a day. I usually have my 1 cup of coffee in the morning before I take my meds because it might be like partially a placebo. I feel like that first sip, like before the caffeine can even like actually get into your system, feels like it wakes me up. Like the smell of coffee wakes me up, you know?
Wow.
And gets me started. And so I have my coffee, and then later when I've had some protein with my breakfast, I'll take my meds. And then half the
I guess.
time in the afternoon, I don't feel like I need coffee.
Wow. I guess we do get a learnt response alongside it. I thought I'd share some fun facts. Yes, we have a jingle now about quick facts because I thought I'd slam some quick facts at you. How does caffeine work? Well, caffeine works by blocking the action of adenosine, which is a hormone, it's a neurotransmitter that promotes sleep and relaxation, adenosine. By doing that, by blocking that, the action of adenosine, caffeine increases the release of other neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. That's another classic ADHD one.
Yeah.
Leading to increased alertness and wakefulness. So, I hope you enjoyed that quick fact, fellow ADHDers, because like it does, like caffeine does so much in our bodies. You know, it literally stimulates our central nervous system to go into a kind of fight or flight situation and can release adrenaline. So you know, it even increases heart rate. It does all these like physiological things in our body. So that's interesting to hear what is going on with the actual norepinephrine. Fact 2. Are you ready? You want another one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this is what I really wanted to share is like the half-life of caffeine. Because like people typically think that it like fades out linearly. But the half-life, and that's the amount of time it takes to like half the amount of caffeine in your body is 3 to 5 hours in your body. 3 to 5 hours. That means that even if you drink it like at midday, it will half at like 3, and then you've got half again at 6 p.m. So if you're drinking caffeine at like 4 p.m., then you still have caffeine in your body at like 11 p.m. And I don't think I realized that until I listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast about caffeine. And it helped me understand that it swims in our body and it actually takes time to process and it takes water to process too. So if you don't have like the water in your system to process it through your body, then to me, it feels like it stays longer. I don't know if you've felt that. But I think because I have such sensitivity, you know, there was one time I was on a bus and I had a Dr. Pepper, a large fountain Dr. Pepper. Okay? And I did not know it had caffeine in. And I was freaking the frick out for like 3 hours on this bus, feeling like I was having a heart attack. And it was not fun. It was not fun at all.
Wow.
At the time, I didn't know that I had like unprocessed trauma and intense emotional experiences from my past involving fight or flight. So like my nervous system is always ready to go at any moment anyway. So the fact that I had this adrenaline, I was honestly feeling like I'd had a heart attack. So that was wild. Caffeine it's just crazy to me. And it's nice that you can have a positive relationship with it. I also wanted to address the effect it has with meds. Everyone's got different like associations or relationships with caffeine. Everyone's got different tolerance levels. And I just feel like it's important to both say, do what you want, you're free beings, but it's also good to be aware that caffeine is a stimulant and our meds can be stimulants a lot of the time, and it can contribute. But a lot of people have also said, from the research that I've been researching on, from like the community and Reddit and stuff, that some people can have coffee and meds fine. And so I guess it's up to our individual selves to be aware, like, oh, is this like monitoring ourselves and being like, oh, is this increasing my anxiety? Is this like increasing my heart rate too much? Like, am I more angry at people? Am I more stressed? So that's what I learned about.
I think,
presence.
since I've been medicated, I've definitely been more conscious about my caffeine consumption. Because like we have an espresso machine at home. So it's like I can just make espresso when I want, basically. But I find that, since I started taking meds, I definitely try to be more aware of like, okay, how much coffee have I had today? Like I said, I try to stick to like 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day now that I'm on my meds. Whereas before I was probably having like 3 or 4 cups of coffee plus a cup of tea or two a day. Right. So I don't know how many milligrams of caffeine that is, but probably a lot.
Yeah. Like,
But yeah, it's interesting because I had always said before, like, when I have my coffee, it feels like it quietens my brain and I can focus a little bit. It
yeah.
like turns my brain on almost. Because again, that dopamine, that norepinephrine, I guess, are getting activated.
I miss that. Like, I really do. I feel like it's hard not having caffeine, and even like I look at it in the store at Coca-Cola, and I'm like yearning for it, because I'm like, wow, those sweet summer days when I used to have it as a kind of like when I didn't have meds, or it's a quick focus thing. But I think there is something to say about tolerance. And I have a fun fact about tolerance, actually. Let's share a quick fact.
Quick fact.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so with tolerance, caffeine works by blocking those adenosine receptors in the brain, right? And when caffeine binds to those receptors, it temporarily prevents adenosine from having its usual calming effects, right? So you feel that as alertness. You reduce the perception of fatigue, and you feel the improved focus. With regular caffeine consumption, your brain can become accustomed to this blocking action. As a result, you may need more caffeine to get the same level of alertness, right? And we know that as tolerance. And so over time, we become less responsive to caffeine's stimulating effects. And there's a word called neuroadaptation. The brain undergoes neuroadaptation in response to caffeine exposure, and it may produce more adenosine receptors or reduce their sensitivity, effectively countering caffeine's blocking action. So what that means is, if we're regularly
essentially
having it, it lowers our focus from it. And so one super inspirational guy I know has it for like twice a week or like 3 times a week, and then he lets his body, it's almost like if we're growing our tolerance and reducing our sensitivity over time, he keeps that sensitivity going by having days without it. What do you think of that?
Oh, that's interesting. I can't remember the last day I didn't have coffee.
Because I know that they...
I can tell you the last day I didn't have my meds, but I can't tell you the last day I didn't have coffee.
Because the withdrawal symptoms are real, right? Those headaches are savage, absolutely savage. And to get through that is, honestly, it feels physically painful, right? To have those, like, what, 3 days where it's, like, insane. I don't know, maybe it varies, but for me it was, like, 3 days of, like, intense migraines, it felt like. And so I just wanted to share that because I think that I used to have a Monster every morning, which is 120 milligrams of caffeine.
Really?
Yeah, and I loved it at the time. I thought it was the best thing ever. I was like, oh, zero sugar. But I didn't realize that as I had more and more, and I wasn't really drinking much water, I felt like it would get like a month in and I would have way less sensitivity to it. And I was just like getting really angry more of the time. And this is just my experience, and I know everyone has their own experience, but I think it's important to share. I saw my tolerance change, and I saw that I would stay up all night, and I saw that I didn't realize I wasn't drinking enough water. And so I felt like it added up every day, the caffeine that was in my body, and it was making me more anxious and more freaked out at random things. And I think that's a part of it that I just wanted to share, because I feel like sometimes we're like, oh, it's just ADHD, you know? Oh, it's just like, I'm just a weird person. I'm just like this. But there are these like physical components and physiological responses that like we have. And I think that tolerance is an important thing to say. So there are long-term tolerances, and you have the withdrawal symptoms, and you have the increased consumption, but you can gain your sensitivity back. Like, it maybe if you miss that high that you used to feel with coffee, you can get it back if you can go through the caffeine detox. You know, I know that's like a hard thing to do, especially if it's a routine.
What's interesting though is that, like, for me, I don't get jittery and anxious and stuff with coffee, but with energy drinks, completely different. And I think it's the sugar and the other stuff that's in energy drinks, like the guarana and the taurine and whatever else is, like all that shit that's in there, like whatever that is.
Niacin.
Because I remember once we have an niacin,
niacin,
an energy drink in New Zealand called V, and I had one of the big cans of it when I was, and I was shaking while I was driving, and I was like, oh, this is too much. And I associated with the caffeine, but I don't really get caffeine shakes and like get like this, and maybe it's just that like the caffeine in those is like so much higher than it is in just like a cup of coffee. But
like
I don't know. I think it's the other stuff as well, because
milligrams.
And I think an average cup of coffee is like 120.
Is it? Okay. Because like when I see the 300 milligram ones, I'm like, wow, that is how to like make how I can have a breakdown straight up. 212 in an average cup of coffee, and I bet that varies massive.
Yeah.
And you don't know really what it's going to be when you get a random coffee, which has a massive difference. I know that niacin in energy drinks dilutes your blood vessels, and so it means it like affects how you receive the effects of other chemicals within it. Niacin and the taurine. Yeah, I think taurine is another stimulant, basically, right? So it's like layers of intenseness.
Yeah, I think the taurine is what I really don't. Well, like Red Bull, like it makes me so jittery and weird. Also, I just associate it with bad nights out at university.
So that's got taurine in. Lol.
Right, vodka Red Bull.
Also, we got to talk about soft drinks, because Coca-Cola, for example, has 60 milligrams caffeine in
Mountain Dew.
America. Yeah, Mountain Dew. And they vary from country to country, which is interesting, the caffeine. I know it's 60 milligrams in the States. I think it might be 80 in England. That's what I'm familiar with. So like if you have like 3 cans of Coke, right, that you don't typically think of, oh, it's an energy drink. If you have 3 cans of Coke, that's like full on coffee right there. That's like asking for.
Yeah.
I know that when you have caffeine and it's still in your system at bedtime, it decreases your REM sleep, and REM is the thing we need to build those as ADHDers. We need
neural pathways.
My mind went blank. Fuck.
To build neural pathways.
We need REM, to build neural pathways to kind of reflect on that. That's actually what is the rejuvenating part. You know, we have those 3 sections of sleep, and we have the one that But if we don't have REM, we don't. Fuck, I don't know. I forgot. Oh well, ADHD life.
We're gonna process our
At least
day.
it's
We
relatable.
process our day properly, right?
Yeah. But I found no.
So
Executive function is what I was going to say. It affects the executive function of the next day.
yeah.
So you don't have the physical control of your body. If you don't have REM, it decreases your coordination, and it affects your executive function, which is like how your brain is, controlling itself and what its ability to point focus on things and to stay on track and to regulate your emotions. So if you don't have that, it exacerbates those ADHD symptoms. But I guess it's different for everyone. Like some people have a cup of coffee to go to sleep in the ADHD community.
Yeah, honestly, I used to be like, oh, I maybe I shouldn't have caffeine like later in the day because it's a thing that people say. They're like, oh, I can't have caffeine after 2 p.m. otherwise I'll be up all night. And
Yeah.
then I I started testing it out and I was like, okay, I'll like avoid caffeine in the afternoon. And I still can't sleep. Like I just have sleep problems, so it doesn't matter. I was like, I like coffee, so
So it's worth it. It's worth it.
yeah. It's like
So
I'm
do you
not gonna
actually
sleep
find that you
regardless. It's
actually
not
get
caffeine.
have bad sleep?
Regardless of whether I have caffeine or not, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's,
So it's not caffeine's fault.
I don't
It's
know.
just
This is your
this
experience.
brain.
Brains are weird.
So I put a question out to the community, and I was just like, "What is your relationship like with caffeine?" Um, yeah, I love this one. One's just bad,
No. Oh, bless. I
and
feel
then
you, brother
another one is
or
just
sister.
love with like
I
5 O's.
know.
Love.
I miss it. That sounds so nice.
Um, there's a
Love.
few that are like doesn't affect me. Usually does nothing for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Quite a few people saying like doesn't work at all, but my heart starts racing. So like it doesn't have the stimulating
Yes.
effects as in like mentally for them, but that the heart rate um
There's such a
increases.
comorbidity with anxiety in ADHD, and I feel like when you have that, your your nervous system is more likely to like jump into that fight or flight thing. That's what it is for me. And I feel like caffeine
Mm,
literally switches on your fight or flight. And if you have a negative relationship with stress or a negative relationship with those nervous system states, then it makes it like super bad, and that's what it is like for me. So I feel you.
hmm.
I just like have a heart
Yeah,
attack
there's quite a
feeling
bit of
like,
like um it gives me anxiety. Someone's response was just anxiety.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad this is validating for me too.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad, makes me feel jittery and like my heart is going to be out of my chest. Um, but then, on the flip side, there's a lot of dependent, can't live without it, impervious to its effects, must have it to function. Um, haven't received a diagnosis yet, but I feel like it keeps me regulated and neutral. Um,
Wow.
in a very committed relationship, and then a coffee cup with a love heart.
Wow. It's funny, caffeine, because like it has such a love in the community, and it's everywhere. And so you almost like can't get away from it. It's so normalized that we all take this liquid stimulant that I feel like if you have an adverse reaction, it can be like, oh, like I'm missing out. But it's sometimes I have it even though I know I shouldn't, and it's like, oh, here comes the heart attack again. Savage.
Yeah, actually,
It's
one
so
of the
annoying.
comments from someone was coffee is culturally present in our day to day, morning and after lunch, hard to say no. And then I think that is the Argentinian flag. So, yeah, yes, yeah. In
Yerba
certain
mate.
cultures, it's like it's expected. Yeah, yerba mate. And then like in Italy, it's like your coffee or espresso is very much like part of the culture. But yeah, also here in North America, like it's so normalized to have a coffee to start your day. Like every business will have a coffee machine in it pretty much. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
it's
encouraged.
very present in our culture.
Like the fact that coffee shops changed our culture. Like before coffee shops were abundant and before we had coffee, we would have like ale houses, right? And alcohol has these certain effects on us. You know, we as humans love going outside of our own brain and being stimulated in new ways. And when coffee houses came about, like in, I know that Edinburgh is an example of this city, or Oxford and Cambridge, they started to create these bubbles of communities where you drink caffeine or coffee together, and it would make this like intellectual hive mind. You know, there would be all this cross contamination of ideas, and that's what made a lot of our culture what it is today. Is these insights that came out of like people being stimulated by caffeine, you get real focused, you get real into it, and you mix together with other people doing the same thing, and you create all these like insights. I think that had such a large effect on our society, that like, and it can increase
Yeah.
productivity of workers and all sorts. So we get off on it as humans.
And I think for me personally, there's like a routine to it, which is really useful. Like in the morning, I get up and I grind my beans and I make my espresso and I get my coffee ready and then I sit at the desk to work. And like there's a ritual to it that I find that I really like. I, prefer that so much more than just like if I was to make an instant coffee it's like the process of creating
Yeah,
something and, you know,
it's
there's
almost
something nice
like
to that.
in Japan in the tea ceremonies. It's a similar in that you have these mindful, slow, physical movements that you're doing, where it's very tangible, it's very physical. And I feel like that almost increases the effects. Like you've got the anticipation, which is what dopamine like is all about. You've got the payoff when you drink it. It's super sensory because it's smell, it's the warmth of the mug in your hand. And so it's almost, I have a theory that it almost like makes it even better, because you have this, you're like focusing your mind on these physical things, getting out of like daydream land. You're focusing on what's happening right now, and then you have the stimulant, and you're like, oh, it's a double whammy, because it's like you have a little mindfulness sesh, focusing your mind on the physical, and then you're like, boom, stimulant.
For sure, yeah. Because like I said, I feel like it wakes me up in the morning, like from the first sip, which is, as you said, the half-life of caffeine is 3 hours. So it's like there's no way
Three
that
to
the
five, yeah.
caffeine itself is actually having that effect in that time, but it's the psychosomatic and the like ritual process of it that
Yeah,
gives you that like I am waking. It's like a trigger, like oh, time to wake up, time to do the day
yeah.
things.
It's like
Um,
if you had a morning bell,
and I think if you're using it, yeah,
like a Pavlov
ding
dog
ding,
reaction.
get going.
The smellers come, even like
For
smelling the
sure.
smell of vodka, I'm like, oh, I'm drunk, you know?
Yeah, oh
Same
my God,
thing.
I've been drinking like sober sober beers and sober like ciders and
Oh,
stuff while I'm training, and I swear just like the process of having something that tastes like an alcohol that I'm used to drinking, I still have a little bit of like maybe I'm tipsy now, and I'm like this is 0.03% alcohol.
yeah, I feel you. We have a learnt physiological reaction. I feel like our bodies, like in the same way that Pavlov dog produced saliva when he heard the bell, our body is in anticipating that hit, and it like acts in advance. I swear. Caffeine is a fascinating thing, like, and it's different for everyone. Is there anything else that the community would like to share?
Yeah, someone's comment was weird feeling between feeling sleepy and focused. Depends on the situation. Which yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, some people seem to take it like to uh go to sleep even or like relax.
Yeah,
Um Someone else, I
It can
drink
switch
strong
off.
cold brew coffee as soon as I can. I need coffee to function. And then someone else, I'm addicted to it. It helps me with motivation. However, the coffee needs to be very strong.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
I didn't ask follow-ups, but I would be interested to know if those people who are like, I need strong coffee are potentially unmedicated. Because, like someone else
Mm,
said, when I'm medicated, they take decaf only. When I'm on my meds,
nice.
but otherwise they start their day with a regular coffee.
Nice. Because then you get that same process, that same, what did you
Hmm.
call it? A ceremony of
Like ritual, yeah.
coffee. Yeah, ritual. And then you get the same thing and you get the same taste, which I love. Like I drink Coke no caffeine now and I absolutely love it. I feel like I still like have some of the physiological effects of caffeine just from habit, you know, even though it's
Yeah, for
supposed to not
sure.
have any in. Fascinating. What is the body about? Um, we were talking about Argentina, and I just wanted to share a fun fact because I know that a lot of people that get a bit jittery from caffeine try yerba mate, which is the traditional tea from Argentina. And that actually has caffeine in, but it has, I think, two other stimulants in. And it also has L-theanine in, which is the calming one. It's a bit the effect is a bit more euphoric, and you think
Mm.
that won't be like that strong or that much of a drug, but yerba mate really is. And I used to love yerba mate, and they used to say about it that it has a slower drop off. They say that you don't have the crash that you have from coffee, and so some people do
Mm.
that, but it's still got caffeine in, but it's another thing that I can't have anymore. But that's a option worth trying if you love stimulants and love coffee, but you want to try something a bit different. It tastes like sometimes really bitter, so you got to have a bit of like orange rind or orange juice in there or something, or honey. People put in, soften it up, make it less woody, less rooty. It tastes a bit like root
It's very
juice.
like, yeah.
But if you have it with friends,
And
it's so good because I swear it stimulates
it's
conversation
very
real
much a
nice, you know?
social thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you pass
Go to South
around the
America, everyone's
little
carrying
cup
around their little
together.
mate
Yeah,
on the bus.
I
They'll be
love
like
that.
holding onto the bus with one hand and they've got their mate in the other.
Wow, no way. So
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to explore about caffeine, Addy? Shall we wrap this up?
No, I think I'm good. It's just interesting to see like the range of different like reactions that there are. I guess I'd say, if you feel like you're having problems, like just take a step back and maybe observe like, okay, when I have caffeine, do I feel jittery? Do I feel anxious? And maybe then it's
Yeah,
not for you. Or if it's like I said, maybe it's specific forms of caffeine that give that to you. Like for me, energy drinks not
yeah.
not for me,
It's worth
because
lining
there's
out.
different ways to intake your caffeine, and just be mindful, like if you are taking meds, keep an eye on like whether you feel like your heart rate is increasing and your blood pressure is increasing, because those do tend to have an effect. um yeah,
Or
just be
if you're a bit
mindful
more
like anything
bitey.
with substances.
Yeah.
If you're bitey, yeah, like chewing things.
Yeah, well, if you see yourself like being angry at people and you've had caffeine that same day, it's worth being aware. Because I swear, like, having ADHD is hard, and it's kind of like an art of managing this like wild animal inside sometimes to me, right? And I feel like
Mm.
everything is an iterative process of like self-observation and what factors are at play right now in my body and in my routine. What am I doing? What am I not doing? And I think
Hmm.
that like we all in some way are watching what we're doing and trying to be like, right, how can I just be in a place that works for me? And we're all so different, especially when it comes to energy drinks and caffeine. So I think it comes down to again to observation and just taking care of yourself in whatever way is good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So with
So I
that,
have a
we will love
to
you.
end with. I have a funny story.
Yeah.
about coffee, related to coffee. So back several many years ago, Ben and I used to date, and we met up at the train station, and he says to me, "Addie, do you want to go get a coffee?" And at this
I
point,
was really serious.
I did not know Ben for drinking coffee, and I immediately knew something was up. And that was the conversation where we decided to not be in a romantic relationship anymore, essentially. So
Sozo.
that's
Soza.
my association with Ben and coffee. It's out of character for him.
Yeah, I was like,
Is
let's go
what
have
I will
coffee. I
say.
need to break up with you. I'll butter her up with stimulants so she doesn't feel the pain.
This seems
Lol.
like
Was that my
seems
plan?
like a good choice.
Lol. Well, I'm glad that
But here we
it
are.
led to a good
10
friendship.
years later, still friends.
Still good friends. Still bonding over being wild creatures. Thanks for that lovely story. We have an Instagram now. It's called ADHD Explorers. Come join us. Message us. Tell us what you think. Ask us questions. Like, we'll probably do an episode where we just take your questions and explore them. So if there's any part of ADHD that you want exploring, message us, DM on ADHD Explorers Instagram, and we'll reply and see what we can do. And we'll research about it and focus on it because it's different for everyone. We definitely want to think about doing a relationships one again because we all have weird problems with relationships. And check us out online on ADHDoers.com. We have a bunch of ebooks that are pay as you feel. And it's like ADHDoers is just a huge community of people of ADHDers trying to help other ADHDers out. And we've got some really amazing stuff that's really helpful on ADHDoers.com. It's pay as you feel. It's pay what you like. ADHDoers.com. Love ya.
With that subscription, pay as you feel, you also get access to the Discord where there's a community of people you can chat to. And it's a great place. There's friendships formed there, just being around other people who get what you're going through is awesome. Thanks so much for listening, guys. You can check us out on all the platforms. Share this with someone. Rate us on Spotify. Rate and review on Apple Podcasts. We love to hear from you, and we love you so much. Thanks.
Keep it real, home dogs. Bye-bye.